Hello, and welcome to Infection Prevention Training for Clinical Staff. My name is Missy Travis, and I'm one of the infection preventionists in the Healthcare Associated Infections Program at the Tennessee Department of Health. Today, we are going to cover some basic infection prevention principles for staff who provide direct patient care in the healthcare setting. So we will be using some educational materials from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, including Project First Line. We will also be referencing some site-specific information for the health department. So let's get started with this important training. This is the agenda for our time together today. We will be discussing personal protective equipment, injection safety, specifically multi-dose and single-dose vials, environmental cleaning and disinfection, cleaning and disinfection of non-critical items, and specific guidance about point-of-care testing. Here is what we expect to learn today. By the end of today's training, you will be able to define personal protective equipment, or PPE, and describe two functions of PPE in healthcare. Discuss two reasons why injection safety actions are important when using multi-dose vials. Describe at least 4 injection safety steps to take when using a multi-dose vial, and comprehend the difference between a multi-dose and a single-dose vial. So let's get started with personal protective equipment. We will start with gloves since they are the most commonly used PPE in the healthcare setting. Let's break down some of the reasons why gloves are so important for infection prevention in healthcare. First, gloves protect you and also keep you from accidentally spreading germs into your work environment. How do they do that? Gloves cover any breaks and cracks in your skin so that germs can't get to them, and also keep germs from spreading from your broken skin to others or to the environment. Gloves can also help germs from spreading from place to place while carried on your hands. How do they do that? Well, when you're wearing gloves, if you touch something with germs on it, the germs can get on your gloves. That's why when you move from one patient or one task to another, you take those gloves off and throw them away, and if needed, put on clean ones. So you've removed whatever is on them, and you don't carry germs to your next patient or task. Now we are going to watch a couple of short videos that demonstrate the correct way to don and doff PPE in a healthcare setting. We will start with putting on or donning.
How to safely put on personal protective equipment, or more commonly called PPE. We will demonstrate one way to appropriately put on or don PPE. More than one donning method may be acceptable to your facility. It's important that you receive training, demonstrate competency, and practice your healthcare facility's donning procedure. First, identify and gather the proper PPE to don, including an appropriately fitted isolation gown, a NIOSH-approved N95 filtering facepiece respirator or higher level respiratory protection, or if a respirator is not available, a face mask, a face shield or goggles, and a pair of disposable patient examination gloves. Perform hand hygiene by using alcohol-based hand sanitizer or washing your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Put on the isolation gown. Tie all ties or snap all snaps. You may need assistance from another healthcare provider. Put on the N95 respirator. When using a respirator with a nose piece, fit it to your nose using both hands. Do not bend or tent the respirator. Extend the respirator under your chin, protecting both your mouth and nose. Pull the top strap over your head, placing it on the crown. Then pull the bottom strap over your head, placing it at the base of your neck. Lastly, perform a user seal check. Do this by using your hands to cover the surface of the respirator and gently exhale, checking that the facepiece bulges slightly. Then, while keeping your hands over the respirator, take in a quick, deep breath, checking that the facepiece collapses slightly. If air escapes through the edges, readjust the fit of your respirator and perform another user seal check. Do this each time you put the respirator on. If a respirator is not available, put on a face mask. Extend the face mask under your chin, protecting both your mouth and nose. If the mask has loops, hook them around your ears. If it has ties, secure them at the base of your neck and crown of your head. Next, put on a face shield or goggles. Lastly, put on your gloves. Pull the gloves down so that they cover the wrist of the gown. You are now ready to enter the patient's room.
Now that we know how to put on PPE, let's see how to safely take off PPE or doff PPE.
How to safely take off personal protective equipment, more commonly called PPE. We will demonstrate one way to appropriately take off or doff PPE. More than one doffing method may be acceptable to your facility. It's important that you receive training, demonstrate competency in removing your PPE without contaminating yourself, and practice your healthcare facility's doffing procedure. Remove and discard your gloves. Gloves can be removed using more than one technique. For the glove-in-glove technique, pinch the outside of the glove near the wrist. Peel downwards, pulling the glove inside out. With your ungloved hand, slide your finger under the wrist of your remaining glove. Again, peel downwards, turning the glove inside out. Discard the gloves. For the beaking method, pinch the outside of the glove near the wrist. Using your finger, pull the glove inside out and over the fingers and thumb to form a beak. With the beaked hand, pinch the opposite glove at the wrist and pull downwards, turning the glove inside out. With the ungloved hand, pull the beaked glove off, touching only the inside of the glove. Next, remove your gown. Untie all ties or unsnap all snaps. Some gown ties can be broken rather than untied. In that instance, break the ties gently, avoiding a forceful movement. Reach up to the shoulders and carefully pull or roll the gown down and away from the body. Dispose of the used gown. You may now exit the patient's room. Perform hand hygiene by using alcohol-based hand sanitizer or washing your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Be sure to clean your wrists where the edge of the glove was located. Carefully remove the face shield or goggles by grabbing the strap and pulling upwards and away from your head. Do not touch the front of the face shield or goggles. Next, remove and discard the respirator or face mask. If you are wearing a respirator, remove the bottom strap by grabbing only the strap and bringing it carefully over your head. Grasp the top strap and bring it carefully over your head, and then pull the respirator away from your face without touching the front of the respirator. If you are wearing a face mask, carefully untie the straps or unhook them from your ears and pull the mask away from your face without touching the front of the mask. Lastly, once again perform hand hygiene after removing the respirator or face mask. You have now completed the doffing procedure.
Now that we have seen the demonstrations, there are also some helpful infographics that demonstrate how to put on PPE step by step. This is a great reference to keep close to where you are using PPE in the healthcare setting, because oftentimes we are not using all of these pieces of PPE, so it's easy to forget the sequence. This infographic shows how to safely remove PPE. Keep in mind that there are two different ways that you can remove PPE, one that was shown in the video, and then there is also this infographic that shows another way to remove PPE. This will be a great resource to have readily available in the area where you are removing PPE. Also, remember that PPE should be removed before leaving the patient room or area, and it should not be shared between patients. For each of these different concepts for infection prevention, we want to ensure that you know how to properly use and properly perform each of these different components. And so that is why we discuss the competencies for each one. For PPE competencies, we are looking for the proper selection and use. If you are caring for a patient with an infectious disease, this is especially important. Make sure that you are familiar with the isolation precautions required for some of the most common illnesses that you see in the clinic. We also want to ensure that PPE is readily available for use when indicated. In addition, you should be putting on and taking off PPE like we discussed today. We know that healthcare workers are capable of contaminating themselves when taking off PPE, so it is very important that you perform this task carefully and dispose of contaminated PPE in the correct place. Now we are going to transition to injection safety and multi-dose vials. Let's start with some vocabulary. Here is the definition from the CDC for multi-dose vials. Let's watch a short video about using multi-dose vials from the CDC.
Many vaccines, including the current vaccines for COVID-19, come in small bottles with more than one dose of vaccine inside of them. These multi-dose vials are accessed multiple times to vaccinate multiple people with a fresh needle and fresh syringe every time. Using multi-dose vials safely helps ensure they don't become dirty and possibly harm people. That's why it's really important to follow injection safety steps and instructions from the vaccine maker when using a multi-dose vial. Here are 10 injection safety steps to remember when working with multi-dose vaccine vials. However, depending on the vaccine maker may recommend additional steps, so be sure to check before starting. Step 1. Always prepare multi-dose vial injections away from patient care spaces in a designated clean area. Preparing multi-dose vials in a separate space helps ensure they are handled correctly and decreases the chance for mistakes. Step 2. Clean your hands before you touch the vial so that you don't get germs from your hands onto the vial, because they could get inside the vial and contaminate the vaccine. Step 3. Check the label to make sure it is a multi-dose vaccine vial. If it's not, the vial should only be used once for a single patient. Next, confirm the vaccine is not expired. Expired vaccines may not work as well and should not be used. Step 4. Look and see if the vaccine appears the way the maker of the vaccine tells you it should. If it doesn't, or you're worried something has gotten inside the vial and made it dirty, don't use it. It could be contaminated. Step 5. Use a brand new sterile needle and brand new sterile syringe for every vaccine dose. Just using a new needle is not enough. You must use a new needle and new syringe, because if the syringe is dirty or has been used, blood can get into the vial when you draw up the vaccine, even if it looks clean, risking the spread of viruses like hepatitis C or HIV. Step 6. Disinfect the top part of the vial stopper, with an alcohol prep pad every time. There are a lot of germs on the top of the vial. If it's not clean, then when you insert the needle into the vial, germs can get pushed into the vial, contaminating it so the vaccine inside can't be used. If it is used, those germs could be injected into patients and make them sick. Step 7. Let the top dry before sticking the needle in. This gives the alcohol time to kill any germs that may be on top of the vial. Step 8. The first time you put the needle in the vial, write the date and time it was opened on the label to help prevent the vaccine from being given to a patient beyond its use date. Step 9. Follow the vaccine maker's instructions for storage and for how long you can use the vaccine after you first access the vial, which varies by product. Beyond use or improperly stored vials must be thrown away. Step 10. Never pool doses. Combining partial doses from multiple vials to make one dose for a patient can increase the risk of germs or other stuff getting into the vaccine, which can make people sick. By following injection safety steps and vaccine maker instructions every time, you will help keep yourself, your colleagues, and your patients safe.
So as we learned in the video, multi-dose vials are different from single-dose vials in several ways and require important injection safety actions. So what are some of those? If you said multi-dose vials are accessed by a new needle and syringe more than once to pull out individual doses for separate patients, you are correct. Accessing the vial more than once can be an infection prevention issue. It is important to take injection safety actions to reduce the chance of contamination and to protect patients. Contaminated vaccines cannot be used. If a needle or syringe is reused or dirty and goes into the vial, anything that's on the needle or syringe will get into the vial and contaminate the rest of the vaccine inside. If the vaccine is contaminated, it can't be used anymore and it has to be thrown away. So why does this matter? Well, if a multi-dose vial is contaminated by a used needle or syringe, every patient who gets an injection from that vial after the contamination occurs could get a disease like hepatitis or HIV. Some patients have even died from hepatitis after getting a contaminated injection. If a contaminated vial is used, public health authorities need to be notified right away. That's because everyone who got a dose from that vial has to be contacted and followed so that they get the information about what happened and so they can be tested to find out whether they got infected. And finally, of course, we don't want to throw away vaccine that could have been otherwise given to patients. This is a great handout to use and to post in areas where you are using multi-dose vials. It walks you through the steps for using a multi-dose vial safely. Now that we have covered multi-dose vials, let's discuss the differences between a multi-dose vial and a single-dose vial. And both of these are written on this helpful infographic from CDC. Just a reminder that a single-dose vial is approved for use on a single patient for a single procedure or injection, while a multi-dose vial is recognized by its FDA approval label, and it can be used for more than one patient when aseptic technique is followed. But ideally, even multi-dose vials are used for only one patient. Single-dose vials typically lack an antimicrobial preservative. So that's why we don't want to save leftover medication from these vials. Harmful bacteria could grow and infect a patient. So these need to be discarded after each use. On the other hand, multi-dose vials typically do contain an antimicrobial preservative to help limit the growth of bacteria. However, preservatives have no effect on bloodborne viruses, and that's why we still only want to use one needle and not reuse needles when we are accessing the multi-dose vial, even if it's the same needle from the same patient. Discard multi-dose vials when the beyond use date has been reached, when doses are drawn in a patient treatment area, or not drawn in a patient, or I'm sorry, when doses are drawn in a patient treatment area and not a clean area, or anytime the sterility of the vial is in question. And finally, single dose vials and multi-dose vials can come in any shape and size. Do not assume that a vial is a single dose vial or a multi-dose vial based on the size or volume of the medication. You always want to check the label. Here are some safety notes for both types of vials. Remember, before the procedure, to read the label. If it says single dose, it has already been accessed, throw it away. If it says multi-dose, double check the expiration date and the beyond use date if it was previously open, and visually inspect to ensure no visible contamination. Remember, when in doubt, throw it out. During the procedure, use aseptic technique. Use a new needle and syringe for every injection. Be sure to clean your hands immediately before handling any medication. Disinfect the medication vial by rubbing the diaphragm with alcohol. Draw up all medications in a clean medication preparation area. After the procedure, discard all used needles and syringes and single-dose vials after the procedure is over. Multi-dose vials should be discarded when the beyond use date has been reached, doses are drawn in a patient treatment area, and anytime vial sterility is in question. There are several competencies used to determine if safe practices are being used for injection safety. Let's review each one. Using aseptic technique when preparing and administering medications and vaccines. Disinfecting the access diaphragms of medication and vaccine vials with each reinsertion of a needle into the vial. Use lancets, needles, and syringes for one patient only. And enter medication and vaccine containers with a new needle and a new syringe, even when obtaining additional doses for the same patient. Ensure single dose or single use vials are used for one patient only. Dedicate multi-dose vials to a single patient whenever possible. If they are used for more than one patient, restrict the medication and vaccine vials to a centralized medication area and do not bring them into the immediate patient treatment area. All sharps are disposed of in a puncture-resistant sharps container, and filled sharps containers are disposed of in accordance with the regulated waste rules. Now let's discuss some more environmental and cleaning principles. It's important to keep the healthcare environment clean to stop germs from spreading. Clean the healthcare environment at a minimum of once a day. What are some places that you can think of that need to be cleaned and disinfected often? There are a lot in healthcare. Think about patient rooms. When a patient leaves a room or is discharged, before a new patient goes into that room, it should be cleaned and disinfected. You also want to think about high-touch surfaces. These are areas that get touched a lot throughout the day. And then finally, items that could otherwise be have high levels of disinfection, such as high levels of soiling, including toilet seats and bathrooms. The EPA has many resources about disinfectants for use in healthcare, and a list of disinfectants are effective against different germs, including Candida auris, C. diff, and also SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. So if you have a novel virus, you know that you're seeing a patient that might have one of these novel viruses, and you're not sure if your disinfectant has been approved for that particular virus, you can go to the EPA website and look up that particular disinfectant. This is what the list looks like after you click on the link. So you can look for either the EPA number, which is on the label of the disinfectant, or you can look for the disinfectant itself. These are some of the competencies for cleaning and disinfection. Routine and targeted cleaning of environmental surfaces as indicated the level of patient contact and degree of soiling. Clean and disinfect surfaces in close proximity to patients and frequently touched surfaces. Promptly clean and decontaminate spills of blood or other potentially infectious materials. Select EPA registered disinfectants that have microbicidal activity against the pathogens most likely to contaminate the patient care environment. And don't forget about those lists on the EPA website. Follow manufacturer's instructions for proper use of cleaning and disinfecting products. And make sure that everyone's engaged in environmental cleaning and wears the appropriate PPE to prevent exposure to infectious agents or chemicals. And the minimum is typically going to be gloves. Next, let's talk about cleaning and disinfection of non-critical devices. By definition, non-critical devices are objects that may come in contact with intact skin, but not mucous membranes, and should undergo cleaning and low or intermediate disinfection, depending on the nature and degree of contamination. Frontline healthcare workers are often responsible for cleaning non-critical patient care equipment because it is used multiple times on multiple patients throughout the day. It is important to remember that these items need to be cleaned and disinfected between each patient. Some examples are listed on the slide. Also, you need to follow the manufacturer's instructions for cleaning equipment. It's important to remember that germs not only live on environmental surfaces like we discussed earlier, but also devices. There are germs that can survive on surfaces and devices for long periods of time if they are not cleaned and disinfected properly. This can lead to an infection in a patient. Here are some of the competencies for cleaning and disinfection of non-critical devices. Policies, procedures, and manufacturer's instructions are used in the facility and available. Reusable medical devices are cleaned and disinfected and maintained according to the manufacturer's instructions. Single-use devices are discarded after use and not used for more than one patient. Healthcare workers who are doing the cleaning and disinfection wear the appropriate PPE, at a minimum gloves, and medical devices are stored in a manner to protect from damage and contamination. Finally, let's talk specifically about point-of-care testing equipment and devices, since they are frequently used in the clinic setting. The same rules apply to these as to other medical equipment, but these types of devices can often become more contaminated with blood and body fluids. Let's quickly review the competencies for point-of-care equipment cleaning. New single-use auto-disabling lancing device is used for each patient, and if used for more than one patient, the point-of-care blood testing meter is cleaned and disinfected after every use according to the manufacturer's instructions. Here are some of the key takeaways from the learning session today. We have gone over PPE and how it protects you and others, how cleaning removes visible dirt and disinfecting kills germs, and how it's important to keep the healthcare environment clean to stop the spread of germs. We've also talked about the difference between multi-dose vials and single-dose vials, and how contaminated vaccines cannot be reused, and injection safety actions are important. Here are some resources in addition to all the things that we have covered today. You can keep exploring these topics on your own using the resources on this slide. You can also follow Project First Line on social media. In case you didn't know, there is an infection preventionist assigned to each region in Tennessee. Here is the map with the corresponding infection preventionist and contact information. Please reach out to us if you have specific questions about infection prevention. Thank you so much for your time and attention today, and I hope this information will be valuable for you going forward.